Pop quiz. What do XFODBC, CodeGen, XF Server Plus, Synergy DBL, Report Writer, and UI Toolkit all have in common? Hint, it's not the snazzy name. All these applications refer to repository to obtain information about your data structures, their attributes, and their organization in your database. In this video, you'll learn how to create a repository and define your data structures and files within the repository application, with a specific focus on preparing your structure and file definitions for use by Harmony Core. By the end of the demo, you'll know how to navigate the repository user interface and what you will need to include in your setup to allow CodeGen to generate source code for a Harmony Core web service. Keep in mind that repository use is a prerequisite not just for Harmony Core. You'll need an up-to-date repository to work with Report Writer and XFODBC. Repository also comes in handy when working with UI Toolkit. Defining all input field qualifiers in your repository allows for a greater degree of consistency in your user interface. Meanwhile, XF Netlink and XF Server Plus can pass repository structures as parameters. In Synergy DBL, you can use the repository qualifier with the .include compiler directive to instruct the compiler to include structures from your repository. So what exactly does repository do? Repository stores metadata, data about data, and serves as a system for defining data for use across Synergy DE products. Repository stores data definitions in two ISOM files, a main file and a text file. Repository is a core Synergy DE development tool, so before you get started, you will need to have Synergy DE installed on your machine. If you would like to be able to take advantage of Visual Studio's environment and features as you create and maintain your repository, you will need the Synergy extension for Visual Studio, also known as SDI. In this video, we'll be working in a Windows environment and running Synergy DE version 11.11f. We won't generate repository files from within Visual Studio, but if you would like supplementary information on how this is done, check out the repository documentation. Repository works on all platforms, so even though this tutorial features usage of a mouse in a Windows environment, you can achieve the same degree of control using shortcuts and arrow keys on Linux or OpenVMS. To learn more, check out our documentation on using the repository interface. Now that we've cleared that up, let's get started. First things first, make sure your command prompt is configured for Synergy. Next, navigate to the location where you would like your repository to live and run the following commands to set up the environment variables for the repository's main file and text file. The last line will start the repository application, and you should see an empty window with the Modify menu open. The Modify menu will be your main launching point within the repository application. But for now, open the Utilities menu and select Create New Repository. Since we set RPS mfill and RPS tfill already, the Create Repository text fields will be auto-populated with these file paths. Click OK, and you'll return to the main window. Now that the main and text files are all set, you can start adding data structures. For the purpose of this demo, we'll be working with just one data structure assigned to a DBL ISOM file type, but repository allows you to choose from a variety of types in addition to DBL ISOM: ASCII, relative, and user-defined. When working with Harmony Core, keep in mind that file types are limited to DBL ISOM and relative. To define a new structure, select the Structures option in the Modify menu. In the Structure Definition window, add the structure name, file type associated with the structure, and a short description. Leave the Tag Type dropdown set to None. Tags are an advanced feature that uniquely distinguish different structures, so we won't be working with them in this demo. Once that's done, click Attributes. Repository will create the structure and take you to the Structure Attributes window. Select the Fields option from the Attributes menu, and the Field Definitions window will appear. For future reference, if your field list is empty, you have the option of loading field definitions directly from a pre-existing include file. To do this, select Field Functions, Load Fields, then enter the name of your include file. If the include file contains more than one record, you have the option of specifying which record you would like to use. For instance, if you would like to use the fourth record, you would enter 4. To remove irrelevant data, you can specify the characters between which all text should be stripped. For the purpose of this video, we'll be adding a field manually. To do this, select Add. The field definition window includes multiple tabs worth of details. The minimum information you'll need to create the new field is a field name, field type, and size. If your goal is to incorporate web services into your existing solution via Harmony Core, you'll need to define the following: the field name and description, and the data type and size. If the type is implied decimal, you'll need to define its precision. If the type is an array, you'll need to add the number of elements in each dimension. If you would like the field to be required for post and push operations, make sure to flag the field as required in the Validation tab. From here, you can customize the access different components will have to your new field. Thinking ahead to possible use with Harmony Core, you can restrict the new field's visibility to authenticated users only. On the repository side, this is done by adding harmony_authenticate to the long description. If you would like to exclude a field completely, that is, prevent it from being exposed via Harmony Core endpoints, simply add harmony_exclude to the field's long description. Ultimately, you'll wind up defining multiple fields. But at this point, we're going to click OK, and you'll see your new field listed in the Field Definitions window. Now, let's move on to the next attribute on the list: keys. In the context of use with Harmony Core, each of your item structures will need a primary key. In repository, that's the first key in your list. To get started on that first key, close the Field Definitions window and select the Keys option from the Attributes menu. When the Key Definitions window appears, click Add. In the Key Definition window, enter a key name that's unique within the current structure and a description. Make sure the default option, Access, is selected in the Key Type window, since this is a true key within the data file. Keep the Dupes Allowed box unchecked, as this first key is assumed to be our primary key, and we don't want to allow duplicates. The same goes for the Modifiable option. This field only applies to access keys other than the primary key, so in this case, the default unchecked state is appropriate. Finally, define a field segment by selecting F for Field in the Seg Type drop-down menu, and enter the field's name. Now that this structure and its relatively simple attributes are listed, it's time to define its associated file. Once again, start by opening the Modify menu. Next, select Files and click Add. The minimum information that Harmony Core requires for file definitions is the file name, description, type, and the open file name, the name of the actual data file, including the file path. Once you've entered that information, select Assign, and then Add to assign a data structure to the file. Enter the name of the structure, select OK, and you're all set. Once you close the Assign Structures window, you should now see the assigned structure visible in the File Definition window. Finally, click OK to add the file definition, and with that, you're free to close repository. You may have made it to the end of this introduction to repository, but never fear, there are plenty of resources available on the Synergex website, YouTube, and GitHub. For instance, this demo covered some of the essentials when it comes to configuring your repository for use with Harmony Core, but you can find information on more advanced topics, like relationship types and tags, in the Harmony Core wiki. For now, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again in another video.